Somebody called the cops because Sony might have just made a lens that's too good for the money. And we're talking about it today. It's the newer E 70-350 F4.5-6.3. This is a mid-range telephoto for crop sensor Sony bodies. And we're gonna break down everything that you need to know about this lens today. And there's a lot to cover, so let's get started. Welcome back, friends, and today we're talking about the newer Sony 70-350. This is an APS-C lens for Sony E mount cameras, and wow, this thing is absolutely incredible in so many ways. We're breaking down everything today that's important to do with this lens in terms of build, features, performance, all that good stuff, so that by the time this video is done, you should have a really good idea if this thing's gonna be right for you or not. So having said that, guys, if you haven't seen one of my videos before, my name's Stefan Malik. I do a lot of photography and filmmaking news reviews and tutorials. So if you like this video, if it helps you out, if you enjoy this content, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. Anyways, let's dive into build. Let's have a quick look at an unboxing and the build and features of this lens. Here's a few basic specs to get you going. It's nicely packed and has your bare bone basics, some paperwork, the lens and the lens hood. And I was a bit surprised, being a more expensive G series lens, that it didn't include a bag or some kind of case. Moving on, this lens is a great size and weight. It measures only 7¼ inches long with the lens hood and only 5½ without. Fully extended, it's only about 9 1/8 inches long. And this is impressive considering it's quite a capable telephoto, and it weighs only 625 grams, which is about 1.5 pounds. It is a plastic or composite build, but altogether feels pretty well put together, similar to the newer 16-55 f2.8. Features that you'll find on the lens include a zoom lock switch, as well as a customizable focus hold button, an automatic manual focus switch, and an image stabilization on and off switch. The zooming is nice and firm, and to zoom the entire focal range from 70 to 350 is only a quarter turn, quite impressive. The focus ring is also nice and firm, as well as accurate. On the front you'll find 67mm filter threads. It also has a nice metal mount, and I was surprised to see a fantastic little rubber gasket for additional weather sealing. Looking at the build as a whole, it's definitely not G Master quality, but it is good for what it is, and for that reason I give it 4 solid stars. In terms of value, this thing is quite good. Sony really filled a gap when they introduced this lens not too long ago, and I think a lot of APS-C shooters were really happy with this release. It's absolutely not the cheapest lens at around $1,000, although on sale for about $900 at the time of this video. But for $900 you're actually getting quite a bit. As you'll see in a minute here, it's a fantastic performing, image stabilized, incredibly sharp and capable mid-range telephoto, and there's really not much to compare it to. There's the full frame 70-300, which is not as good of a performer. You've got basically a kit lens in the 55-210, which I really don't recommend. This lens's performance really reminds me of the 70-200 f4, which is much more expensive, not to mention a full frame lens. So at $900 to $1,000, for me the value is fantastic. I give it 4.5 stars for value. So now let's really look at why. And to answer that, we're diving into performance, and that's what you want to see anyways. But first let's answer who this lens is really for. Well, it's going to be absolutely fantastic for a beginner, all the way up to an intermediate shooter. It's doubtful though that you'll find it in a professional's bag. I'll tell you right now, loving nature and having a thing for birds, I would have loved to have access to this lens as a beginner. But let's jump right into this thing, rip it apart, starting with the autofocus. Long story short, it's awesome. Paired with any recent A6000 series camera, in my case the A6600, this thing is phenomenal. I average in the 90% for hit rate, regardless of what I'm doing, whether it's sports or wildlife. Even despite some user error there, it still manages to lock on and find the subject. Incredible. As far as video goes, and this is definitely not a lens made for video, it's also phenomenal. You might not be filmmaking with it, but you can definitely capture some great video of some critters. Watch how fast it focuses as I fumble around to find my subject. And don't forget, this thing is image stabilized. That's why I'm able to handhold it so nicely even at its longest focal length. So of course the newer 6000 series cameras have amazing autofocus, but Sony's actually put their XD linear focus motor into this lens that you don't usually see in APS-C lenses. So this is a major upgrade that they've thrown into this lens that's going to contribute to that speed. Its size and weight is just fantastic for something of this optical quality, as well as performance. Here's the 70-350 on my A6600, and keep in mind this is a 105-525mm equivalent in full frame, and here it is next to my A7 III with my 100-400 G Master. Incredible difference. It's also got a great minimum focus distance, which, although it's variable, does allow you for some really creative and macro-like shots. Alright, let's have a look at sharpness and overall optical quality of this lens. Well, I'm really happy to report that it's actually fantastic. In the center here, it's razor sharp, and the corners are actually way sharper than they have any business being. They're very, very good. Stopping down here to 6.3, it's just an improvement on the same. Absolutely incredible performance out of this lens, all the way up to about f13. And after f13, you're going to get a little bit of softness, especially into the corners, and it falls apart just a little bit at f18, but absolutely still usable. So looking at it zoomed in all the way to 350, it's fantastically sharp in the center once again, with just a touch of softness in the corners. And this is kind of typical for a big telephoto lens like this to be a little bit soft, but this is actually a better than average performance, I would say. Stop down for a little bit of an improvement, again all the way down to about f11 or so, and after f11 into f13 you're going to get a little bit of softness again. But overall, as far as overall sharpness is concerned, this lens is absolutely incredible and way more than I expected. Hats off to Sony on this one. Talking about the bokeh of this lens, it's fairly decent considering that most telephoto lenses have less than impressive background blur. It's nowhere close to the world's best, but I don't find it overly distracting, and being a G series lens with 7-bladed aperture, it's acceptable. So having a closer look at image stabilization, this is a huge feature, especially if you're using a camera body like the A6400 that's not image stabilized. Hand-holding any big telephoto at long focal lengths is going to result in any movement looking exaggerated, so it's really a nice feature, especially when you're shooting at 350mm, which again is a 525mm equivalent. So looking at performance as a whole, this lens really has it all. Amazing optical quality, great autofocus, image stabilization. It really is fantastic, and as far as performance goes, I give it 4.5 stars. So wrapping up, my general experience with this lens has just been great. I think it's just a fantastic size and weight. The sharpness you get out of it is just next level. It's got every feature that I'm really looking for. Like always, here's my personal pros and cons for this lens, and I really had to dig to find some cons. Rating this lens as a whole, I think it's a great step forward for Sony in the APS-C market, and I give it 4.5 stars. If you're a subscriber, you know that I also like to rate things on a scale from never think about again to consider to definitely buy. And in this case, if you're a beginner to intermediate photographer or hobbyist, you love shooting nature and you're looking for a mid-range telephoto zoom, this thing is going to be absolutely fantastic for you, and I can fully and absolutely recommend it. It's a definite buy, especially if you can find it on sale. Well, there it is, guys. There's my review of the Sony 70-350 F4.5-6.3. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it helped you out, and if it did, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. And of course, drop your questions and comments down below. If you want to pick this lens up, if you're ready to buy it, check out in the description for affiliate links that I'll leave down there for you. And like always, make mistakes, be yourself, and get out there and take some more pictures. See you next time.